Okay, so we gathered everyone together, and we're just pulling a story out of thin air here. It's going to happen in Erfurt. We're making a coastal city, and something happens. The mayor's daughter gets kidnapped, and now we have an investigation, or really, it's the initial adventure. It. I would recommend it being something short, a one or two shot. It's someplace local. Go here, check it out, use your skills, come back and report to a higher authority. So they might find a clue about where to go next. This is only a one step. This is to get you guys together, guys and girls. This is to get you together and to get you to communicate as characters and use your skills and rely on each other a little bit. Someone can still step up and say, "Look, I'm really good at this." In fact, if we come up, it looks like Gintilian here. Look at this. High int. Here's investigation and perception. This could be an ideal that if he wanted to assert himself, then he's going to do so. Or Ancora can say, "No, I want to take over. Maybe the evidence was medical in nature, and as a player, he or she has accepted this role of a medic, and so she uses her magics and her skills in order to follow whatever the evidence is." I thought there's a tiefling. There was. We did make a tiefling hermit in a prior week, though the hermit that we rolled for this week was the gold dragonborn. High perception. I'm rolling ones here. Look, we all have bad days. But you can make a sample adventure as a DM that can incorporate, like a little investigation that can incorporate this, right? You have something that needs lifted up or, punched or whatnot. Mulsha can step in and lend his aid. Heki might need to talk with, he might need to be a face and talk with someone in order to distract them, to then allow you all to slip in. And the rest of you might not be good at stealth, but if he's really good at distracting, then that's all that's needed. And then Gintilian can go in, start the investigation, and Ancora can back up. And in fact, if you wanted to plant that seed early about developing a relationship between Gintilian and Ancora, that would be a good way of doing it, right? Whether it's just an innocent affection, or you start out as platonic sort of co-workers. You could do the whole, like, if any of you watch anime, you have a character that's tsundere, which is kind of a hot and cold style. So she'll get into it, feel really natural, and maybe those two find a clue and are discussing it, and they're like, yeah, and then one of them realizes, it doesn't always have to be the female in this case, one of them realizes that they're a little too close, and then suddenly, boo, the ice the ice shield kind of forms, a non-magical ice shield. It's like, this is this, and I think we should go report back. And suddenly, adventure over kind of a thing. We have what we're here, and you get going. But then that could lead to future hot and cold episodes that kind of work each other out until it's just this, consistent and maybe even growing warmth. Investigation, multiple skills, and this could even include a combat. Enough, like, it shouldn't be overbearing. Maybe they have to subdue, I don't know, 2 henchmen that were there to actually be a distraction or something. It's whatever, 2 CR 1 half henchmen. It's enough that you guys can bonk or cast a spell once or twice, and it's over. As a DM, sometimes you just got to set that up. It's not always a contest between you and the PCs about who can survive. Ah, nice roll, Delcorin. You got a 14. So after that, there's this report to authority after group interaction conversation. On the way back, you can create your story, say, okay, well, you know what, Heki, you should report this, and then the others, well, can back it up or do whatever. And so now that this is set, you've proven yourself to this authority figure someone who's of obviously higher level than you, right? This might be a level 5 character, and there's only 4 level 1 of yous. Who could stand a chance against him? At least in the beginning. And so he says, oh, by the way, if you're not doing anything, or whatever the circumstances are, or it could be the leader of the actor troupe is also at the station giving a statement, and he says, the way that you all have come together and done this, I would like to offer you a contract job or a part-time job or something, and I'm willing to pay you half up front if you can go and find this. Or even the mayor is there, right? If the mayor's daughter was kidnapped, he's probably at the police station filing a report, if not these other major NPCs. So you have not just a figure of authority, but several who are using the PCs, but they're using them in a friendly fashion, leaving the PCs then to make their own decisions, but they're acting in this box of authority that has been, created and made for them by the others. And they're acting in a limited scope. And so then, the scope of the adventure widens. To a greater area. That could be maybe a full access to the city, or even the surrounding, if it doesn't have suburbs per se, the populated farm fields around, as the part 2 of the investigation continues. They're still working for an authority, but now they've been given a reason to be together that is an outside influence checking them. It's sort of like playing bumper bowling. You still want to roll strikes, and you don't want to hit the gutter, but if you would have gotten a gutter ball, it'll bounce back. And so you're still heading towards the pins, and that kind of bumper bowling is something that a DM should offer, early on, as everyone's kind of fleshing out who they are and what they're doing. Do they like this character? And then once the strikes start rolling in, you slowly retract those bumpers back, so that the first half of the lane is still bumpered, but the last half you're on your own, and then finally you're on your own the whole way. And that can happen as the characters level up. So now here we find greater fights. Oh, there she is again. You can all say hello to Nisa. Greater fights, more skill checks, and challenges. And this is also a good place. We've already had one of our 4 characters have his background come into play. It's his home turf. It's hello again. It's his city. So now by going out, maybe Gentilian doesn't show him where the cave was on the outskirts of town that he had spent so many years in trying to solve this riddle, but he's close enough that he knows this area and can provide some advice. And so now the spotlight shines on him. And the process continues as we level up a bit, and the characters each have something that they can contribute a little bit more than the others, but everyone is still participating and growing closer. Delcorn, yeah, she's a typical cat. Should I achieve the sacred status of affiliate and get an icon or two? Like, I don't know, maybe I could just make like a cat butt icon or an emote or something. So every time the cats show up, there they are, right? It's the Eye of Sauron looking down upon you. So through this point, the characters are becoming cohesive. Maybe there's not steadfast friendships and one is willing to sacrifice themselves for the other. Or especially, Delcorn, as you were indicating in chat last night about not the purely selfish tendencies of this wizard, as you had generated him, not necessarily the one that I was coming up with. Maybe, though, this chips away at that first layer of ice. Or for Ancora, this chips away at a little bit of her xenophobia that was instilled with her on birth. She already broke through it once by coming out of this cave, of this hermitage, and making her way to the city, but this is the next step. Or we take Mulsha, and Mulsha, while he has these stories to tell, and he's very bold and brash, sometimes growing your character isn't just a strength. It could be showing weakness. This could be a great opportunity for Mulsha to show that, while he has this knowledge, he lets it slip that, something in these fields years ago has left him with a scar, just not a physical one that can be healed. And doing that rounds out the character from this braggadocious, a cool dude with a cool haircut and not a mustache, but tusks that look like a mustache because they're painted the same color as his hair. You have this like really forward person who then kind of lets it slip that I'm a person too. I have these feelings. And then by doing so, by sharing little bit by little bit, dripping it in there, we now have this kind of triangle forming. And looking at it, if we want to tie in romance, hey, it's February, well, as of right now, because we're past midnight, it's February 11th, right? Valentine's Day is around the corner. Well, presumably, Heckley is not in the pursuit of the Dragonborn, the female of the group, because he already has his eyes set on the mayor's daughter. Though he is this charismatic card, and maybe one or both of the other male characters are suspicious of that. But you have the way that Gentilian interacts with Ancora, and the way that Mulsha interacts with her, that are different. And then the person who's piloting Ancora can weigh that back and forth, or even say, I'm not interested at all, at least, whether it's now or at this point in time, or if ever at all. And we're developing, I don't want to say like a love triangle by this point, but we're developing these relationships now. There are interests taking place as you're learning more about each other and more about each other. And I don't mean a physical intimacy with this, but a sense of intimacy as a group. You can start making in-jokes. You can start having references among each other. You will start looking after each other, if not throwing yourselves in the way of an incoming arrow for each other. A person? No, you're an upright, intelligent lizard. You're getting into the RP of this, Delcor, and I like it. So yeah, she, and that could be some really good banter. Even if you're not playing for the tsundere, but you just have this kind of, I'm on my own course and everything is this kind of black and white, or, I'm looking for this riddle. And again, if it's done in the context of, I'm role-playing, you can add in, woman, what are you doing distracting me from this? Shouldn't you be elsewhere? Shouldn't you be making me a sandwich? Again, this is... If any of you are just joining, there's context to this. We're talking roleplay. We're talking characters' interaction and about eventual character growth. In today's world, I really want to make sure that I'm, putting those asterisks and footnotes. I think you all get it, otherwise you wouldn't be in a roleplay channel. But I do want this to be open for newer players and to realize that you can bring up topics, taboos, cultural, marginal issues, things like that. You can do that in the context of your character, and it's not you saying that or doing that. It's for development purposes. It has a context. It's actually going to lead to somewhere, which could even be growth out of that language or behavior. Or you know what? Just having kind of this this cranky wizard who even if Ancora eventually throws herself at him and makes it really, really obvious that she has affection for him or something along those lines, he just doesn't get it. If not out of ignorance, then he's just so focused on this riddle, right? And so that's almost a detriment. It doesn't make him a villain per se, but it's just a character angle. It's something that the other players can enjoy by being witnesses to this. And as you tell this story to other people who are just pure witnesses to the entirety of that, then it can put smiles on faces, and it really makes your character, I'd say human, but not everyone's a human in this case. Delcorin says, I wouldn't be flat out rude, but I could play a little off-putting and slightly, not discriminating, but cautious. Curious? I've not encountered anything like a Dragonborn, so I wouldn't know what to think. Yeah, who knows, right? The Legends of Lore, they're fearsome, temperamental or whatever, and you want to take your time, or however. Dwarves, orcs, elves, gnomes, they're all pretty human-like. A Dragonborn, from what I've seen in pictures, is just like a lizard that walks and talks. That's right. But don't you dare confuse a Dragonborn with a lizard folk, because them's fighting words. Okay, so then we have the scope and the grader, and so it's at this point then that they report to the authority, and we'll say kind of like a mid-tier, and receive a reward and greater chance of service of some kind. It doesn't necessarily have to be, for king and country or for our religious ideal. But now that they've accomplished these tasks, they've shed a little blood, some sweat, some tears, they've gelled as a group together with their personalities and their abilities. They've come back to this like mid-tier commander. Maybe they're level 3 or 4. Like they're closer to him now, just in their own separate ranking. And the person says, look, you've completed this task. I can pass you on to maybe one more higher person. Because as a DM, you don't want to string them along or subject them, in my opinion, for too long. Unless this is purposely a military campaign and they have clear-cut leaders of some kind to report to, and it's expected, the by default expectation is that we're adventurers and we're going to be left to do the things that we want to do on our own. Hopefully this isn't distracting if I'm leaning back some. Leaning forward, it's bad posture, and I don't want to get into bad habits or hurt my back. So if you need me to talk loudly, or if you're having trouble seeing me, then let me know. Otherwise, you can enjoy my Grumpy Cat shirt. Rocks fall, everyone dies. Good. Because all DMs have that evening. In this case, then, they head out again to a more remote or dangerous location. This would be, you're beyond the scope of the town guards now. The town guards guard the town. They don't go up into the mountains where beasties or, vicious other races live and try and retrieve something or to follow the clues that were left behind to rescue the mayor's kidnapped daughter. Therein we have some travel logs, some narration. Characters have maybe some downtime that they can talk, trail talk. It's just them. It's private. There's no one in the city for rumors. Hecky can kind of pine after the mayor's daughter if he wishes. The other two males, if we're kind of setting it up as a quasi-love triangle, can have some fun jockeying back and forth to try and get the attention of Ancora if they choose. And then they arrive at the location and they face danger. I would recommend at this point in time, kind of a third-ish into the story, that someone in the group, it doesn't matter who, someone in the group faces a major peril, a mortal peril, or a peril that would remove them from the game for a while, such as, if not dying, then an injury, or possibly him or herself being kidnapped or taken out of commission in some way. That way, we've had the downtime, the relaxation, the bond building, and boom, everything is getting serious again. And that acts as like an instant catalyst to harden those bonds that you've just made with each other. So hardened bonds with a great near tragedy of some kind. A close call. At this point in the story, maybe this is where they actually see not the person who was paid to kidnap the mayor's daughter, but the one who actually, not the henchman who kidnapped, but the one who, his boss, who then was the one who paid for the kidnapper's services. And it gets real. They realize who they are now and what they're doing and ultimately who they're going to pursue, but they can't pursue it yet, right? They're not strong enough. However, they've overcome this. Maybe they've driven off the big bad evil guy, or in this case, if it's Hecky's rival, Hecky could have been put in great peril. And he's been kind of the third wheel in a 4-member party. So, I don't know, the fourth wheel here. But he is important to the party, and his life is put in danger. Everyone can make this bond with him, and he is rewarded because while he's not maybe developing close relationships to the others in the party, he put his life on the line to rescue the mayor's daughter. And now there's the journey back with this seriousness about them. So serious, there's a big reward at the end. They arrive, then they meet the higher authority figure. So instead of talking to just the captain of the guard, they actually speak with the mayor, the head of the guard himself, right? If he's the head of the executive branch of this city's governmental structure, because he's the one who works with the captain to patrols, strengthen here, we're gonna need more people here, hire, fire, that kind of a thing. And so now you've impressed upon this higher authority, though still a local authority, and the bonds have been formed. And the story continues to grow from here. It's an escalation. It's slow. It's over time. It is something that you just have this back and forth, this give and take. As a writer writing a book, it's much more easier to herd the cats of your characters because everything is under your control. As a DM or as a player, you have everyone else at the table that has their own thoughts, hopes, aspirations, or people who might not be getting the hints that you're dropping, and you don't want to just lay it out there. Even if the person can discern meta-knowledge from in-game knowledge, sometimes you just want to challenge yourself or pursue another route to see if you're testing waters if something is okay. And so from there, the adventure goes outside the city of Earford, because we kind of went outside already when you go to the nearby hills in order to track down the bandits who stole the mayor's daughter. But now we're going further outside. Maybe they're actually sent at this point in time to Ankora's home island, or they're sent back to the capital of this territory where Mulsha was originally posted out of before being sent out to the smaller duty because it wasn't as traumatic. Well, now that he's faced some of these demons and he has confidence in friends, he can go back to his area where things had originated, and suddenly that plot connects to the first. And now he discovers, oh shoot, this rival that was presumably localized to our tiefling monk here is maybe connected to something bigger, and maybe even I'm drawn into it. And so now the spotlight shifts onto Mulsha, who before was maybe this kind of noble savage. He was joking and outgoing, but ultimately could he have been a pitiable character? Because, he's a half-orc, and, who would be interested in that? But still, he felt the bond because Ankora is a half-dragon. He's half-orc. They both have this human commonality. And especially if Delcorin is being, a little standoffish or unsure, he's this, warm-hearted, aggressive type. He might be going for it. Or, you have so much you can play with. All of this you can mold as characters, as a DM, as an author. If you're writing this as an adventure or a book, I mean, you can't really control that in a mod, but you get what I'm saying. You can put hooks in. Hopefully what I'm saying makes sense to you all. Do you all have any questions along the way, or anything that you wanted to add, or an anecdote of your own to share? I'm going to wet my whistle while the delay back and forth processes through. And again, this is a SodaStream ginger ale. I'm not raising a cold one here in front of you all. I want to make sure I'm at peak performance. Delcorin says, nothing on my end. I'm just itching to play now. So Delcorin, as a newer player, discussing this, I mean, while we've just jumped from level 1 to 10 effectively in everything that we've done by the time we've gotten to this point in narration, are you seeing this play out in your mind's eye? Are you seeing the interaction, how things can flow, and how you can naturally pilot a character, even if it's a standoffish character, let alone one who, in re-engaging with the world, wants to then kind of jump in and be a part of it? He goes on to say, from what I read on the updated TOS, you're allowed to partake of adult beverages in moderation. Yeah, I do partake of adult beverages and in moderation as well. I'm not a big drinker, but for wanting to keep the channel, like PG 13, ginger ale will work. maybe maybe sometime if I get a little bit more advanced in my broadcasting, I can set up some kind of a dwarven tavern, and we can incorporate like a beer recipe or something, right? Because you can get those like brew it yourself kits, like it's a little like small, like, I don't know, gallon keg or something, and so we can make a D&D themed, but I'll raise a stein of this homebrew to you all or whatever. Fiendish Acorn, you should write a book based on your campaigns through the years. The first campaign I was talking about, I actually have written that as in a novelization form. If I formatted it to the novel size, the standard paperback novel size, it's about 350 pages. If everything was like spaced and indented in that fashion. It definitely needs some editing, because it's like a very detailed outline, but I know that a lot more detail could be put into it. I super appreciate you saying that, though. I take that sincerely as a compliment, that if you're finding even the little snippets of story that we're generating, or my tales and anecdotes are that inspiring for you, that truly means a lot to me, and it encourages me to want to continue broadcasting for you all, to have these conversations, to share this wisdom. And in turn, as you have these adventures too, this gives you a place that you can come in and you have a friendly audience that will understand, as you're describing in this great detail, things that technically never happened, yet you just described it as the 3D blockbuster hit of the summer, right? That some record-setting box office smash that you just did over pizza and a vinyl mat with some pieces of plastic. Del Corin says, yeah, if given a jumping off point, I can do some RP, even though I'm not a big fan of RP myself. I can do a bit of given something. And, this is something that a lot of newer RPers face, and some make a conscious decision, others might just feel shy about it. Role-playing is something that you have to get into. You have to be willing to take that chance. If you play with a consistent group over time, you feel that context growing, so you can do silly voices and accents. You can get up out of your chair and flex if you gotta make your point. Or put on faces. Or, as I was saying earlier, if you want to explore romantic options with other PCs, let alone NPCs, right? Because, let's say that you don't want, you as Gentilian Delcorin, don't want to get into the relationship with Ancora, the Gold Dragonborn, but maybe you have a fancy for the Mayor's Daughter also, and you want that to be the love triangle with the Tieflings pilot. I'm piloting this Mayor's Daughter, and so it's you. It's a you and me as we're making flirty eyes back and forth. And this is not a judgmental area. I don't care. There's other things in the world to worry about than that kind of stuff. In my opinion, you're welcome to have your own. Are you comfortable with me as your DM and with me as you as my player, that we can have this relationship grow between the NPC and you as a PC in that regard, and that it doesn't make us feel awkward, or it seems like natural growth, and especially if the other player can play off of it, because that was originally his romantic interest to begin with. So it just takes practice, and also a consistent group super duper helps. Though you get to a point where you do this enough, and you start getting into regular natural patterns, maybe voices you're confident in, and you could show up to an RPG convention, because no one knows your other characters. They don't know that you're kind of like putting on that character's mask for what's going on here, and yet it's still genuine to you. It's in front of a bunch of strangers, but you're playing it off perfectly naturally because that character is you. You've played that character before. You've had practice. You have an answer for the different situations that come up because you've already done it. And then you've left an impression on them. You've made them feel comfortable. And it's just this, good deeds, good karma goes back and forth, and it builds the community, and it builds confidence, and it makes other people want to play with you or with others that you've played with because you've left this good impression, and you've gone out of your way to tell a story with other people, because intrinsically we as human beings are storytellers. I know they say this darn near every session, if not every session, but it's true. That's why I continue to repeat it. Oh, whew. You know, for sitting in a big comfy chair, I've really been on a soapbox tonight, haven't I? I'm glad, though, that, hopefully you all are getting some inspiration from this. You're thinking ahead. You're thinking of storytelling. Hey, Bobicus. What's the haps? Well, you came in at kind of the end of part 2. I've been setting the stage where we've taken these 4 characters that we've generated in the week prior. You probably remember Hercules, the Tiefling Monk, Gentilian, Angkora, remember to roll the R, and Molsha Vichegda Bugrush. And we first listed them out as, hey, we're players playing characters. Here's what we want to run. Here's our blurbs. Here's what we want to run. And then we sat down and we said, well, who's going to do what in the party? So let's form a party first, like a level 1. And we did so mechanically. We were assigning roles and going over that process. And that's when we took our first break. And now in this one here, we're going over how to bond the characters together as friends, as potential, more than friends or lovers or things along those lines. And we've fleshed out a bit of a world around the characters as they've gone and done this. So we've incorporated elements that we've done before, such as the map making, such as the tale of the heroic journey. And we've now used those to frame the storyline for these 4 characters as they are going through from level 1 to about 10 is where we've left off here, and showing the direction and the escalation of how the story progresses, of how a DM could run a story that allows for the boundaries to be pushed emotionally, physically, etc. by the characters in his or her game. As long as you don't have snake oil, it's all good. Well, what if, Delcorin, what if the Dragonborn has snake oil? What if it's cultural? Bobika says, I remember the Tiefling and Molsha were interesting traveling companions. Those two, I think you could get a ton of play off of those two. I mean, whether or not it gets, romantic or anything, like, just even as friends, their personalities are in such an interesting conflict that they can play off of each other infinitely along the course of an adventure. And those two alone would make for very, very interesting times. Just frightening, but good people. Yeah, it's a tiefling and a half-orc walk into a bar. It's okay if she has it because she's not on a soapbox. Okay. Yeah, nor wearing the hat and waving the cane. Step right up and get Ancora's famous formula. Oh. Yeah, talk about buddy comedy of the year, huh? Molsha and Hercules, the pretty boy and the pretty boy kind of like entertainer monk, and the he's not necessarily ugly. I mean, we look over at Molsha, he's a 10 charisma. He's he's presentable. He even dyed his tusks to look like a mustache. That takes effort, and he's certainly a person to be seen on the streets. But yeah, those two alone have great potential, let alone adding in the mix of Angkora, who could be a romantic interest for any of them. I mean, we're kind of going by default, right? She's the female in the party, and the others are males, so something will happen. We're kind of setting it up, though, that Hercules, because he's after the mayor's daughter as a partner escort, he's not really in that mix, and so the love triangle could be between a somewhat disinterested or oblivious Gentilian and Molsha, who wants to be very suave and does seek acceptance by others, especially others, he's a half-orc, which means he's half-human. She's a dragonborn, which means she's kind of half-human, half-dragon. So there could be a bond there. Yet, at the same time, Gentilian and Angkora are both hermits who've discovered parts of a riddle, a great unsolvable riddle. And whether they know it or not yet, in some at least platonic friendly way, they need to share that information and come to terms with what these secrets could uncover if put together, which can be symbolic too. You can have that metaphor and symbolism gone in, or you kind of fade to black and you have a firework go off someplace else if something happens. And as a DM, you want to give a wink and a nod if you don't want to be explicit, because everyone has different comfort levels at the table. So, all right, I'm going to take another break here, get up, stretch my back, do a little calisthenics, say hi to the cat because she's jamming out right here next to me, and finish up this ginger ale. So I'll linger and chat for a little bit here once I get back, though. You guys do the same. Take a short rest yourselves, recharge, and we will enter the last third of the broadcast, which is the Q&A. We can share stories if you have questions on something specific that's a mechanic or a spell, or we can just do a little bit of nitpicking. We'll get into that last wind down session and call it a Saturday evening. I'm going to mute the mic, go do my thing, and I will be back in a couple minutes.